Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll get started in just a few seconds here as people filter in. Hello, welcome. Just give it a few more seconds as people make their way into the webinar today. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the Monarch Conservation Webinar Series. Today's webinar is Community-Driven Conservation, how Alternare A.C. protects monarch habitats and empowers rural communities. Our presenter today is Karen Vega, the director of Alternare. My name is Jenna Tots, online education manager, and I'm joined by my coworker, Alyssa Taylor, program coordinator. We begin by honoring the land on which we live and work. The offices of the Monarch Joint Venture are located in St. Paul and Belle Plaine, Minnesota, and we acknowledge that this land is the traditional homelands of the Dakota people, specifically the Mdewakanton Dakota, who have lived here for generations and continue to live here today. We recognize the enduring presence and contributions of Dakota and Ojibwe nations across Minnesota. We welcome you to use Native Land Digital, native-land.ca. This is an Indigenous-led nonprofit organization to see a digital map of Indigenous territories across the world, including other languages and treaties in your area. We want to thank our sponsor for their support of this webinar series. Our supporting sponsor is Reinvent Your Waste. We appreciate your support and dedication to monarch conservation. If your company is interested in sponsoring for next year, please email learn@monarchjointventure.org. And before we get started today, we just have a few community guidelines, helpful hints to get the most out of this webinar. If you didn't register today, we want to make sure we're counting you in the attendance and are able to send you follow-up resources. Please email learn@monarchjointventure.org with your name, city, and state. This webinar and all of our webinars are recorded and posted on the MJV website, and this webinar will be posted by Friday. The entire webinar archive is free and available to watch. This contains over 10 years of amazing monarch conservation webinars. So please, if you haven't gone to the archive, please visit. Wonderful, wonderful presentations from so many amazing experts. During the webinar, please put your questions in the Q&A box. This is found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you don't see Q&A, you should see 3 little dots and it says more. Please click that and you'll see the Q&A box pop up. We'll collect those for the Q&A session at the end. Please don't use the chat for questions. It just helps us to keep ourselves organized. Please use reactions during the presentation. I know in a webinar, it's hard that we can't see people. So reactions are again found at the bottom of the Zoom screen as well. Thank you for practicing. Just a wonderful way to be able to interact with Karen. And then we do have translated captions on this Zoom call. If you'd like to add captions, you can add them in English or in a language other than English. Click the arrow on captions. Be sure the translation button is on when you choose your caption language. I will just say it may be helpful just to have those on. Karen is an excellent English speaker, but there's just a little bit of an accent. So if that's helpful, just to turn on those captions. And finally, all of our webinar speakers represent their own viewpoints, which are not necessarily those of the Monarch Joint Venture. And now I will introduce our wonderful speaker today. Karen Vega is the director of Alternare A.C. She is completing her master's in Sustainable Development Sciences at UNAM and holds a bachelor's in Public Relations from the Universidad del Valle de Mexico. With over a decade of experience, she has worked in communications with international and nonprofit organizations, collaborating with social and environmental leaders in Mexico, including the United Nations Information Center and United Way International. Since 2015, she has supported Alternare's strategic projects, helping to promote its work and build partnerships that further its conservation and sustainable development mission. Thank you so much, Karen, for being here today. I will stop sharing my screen and welcome you to share yours.
Oh, thank you. So for us, it's really nice to be here. Thank you very much for everybody for being here and share with you a little bit of information about the work that we do in the Monarch Biosphere Reserve. So I think that you see my screen, no?
Yep,
It's
looks
okay?
great.
Okay, so thank you. So I'm going to start. Thank you very much for everybody for being here and be interesting about why it's important to work with the inhabitants of the reserve, or what are the things that the inhabitants of the reserve are doing to promote the conservation and the restoration of the reserve. At the end of the presentation, we can solve some of your questions. So I'm going to start sharing with you what is Alternare and why it's important the work that we are doing with the inhabitants of the reserve. So I'm only representing like more than 30 people that work hand in hand with the inhabitants of the reserve. Alternare is a non-profit organization. We have more than 27 years of uninterrupted work with the inhabitants of the reserve, and we are sure that to promote the conservation and the restoration of this amazing forest, we have to do it with the owners of these territories. So, how we do it? We promote a comprehensive sustainable development model. In the screen, you can see a little bit of institutional information. There you can see our mission. We work daily to conserve, to restore natural resources in the communities through knowledge sharing and innovation. And we really believe that it is important to promote the exchange of traditional knowledge. The communities have an amazing knowledge. They are sure that they have to conserve the forest, yes, for the amazing phenomenon of the monarch butterfly, but also for the amazing environmental services that we have from these forests, like air, water for our production and self-consume, food, no, biodiversity. I'm going to share this information in the next slides. Also, all the information that I'm going to share with you, please keep in mind that in Alternare, we promote the capacity building. No, we Alternare is in Latin alternativa, alternative. So we believe that to promote the conservation and the restoration, we have to promote that the people have alternatives of life, sustainable alternatives of life. So this is why we work in the reserve. Also today, we are more than 30 people that work daily with the owners of the land in administrative activities, but also in the territory. And then you can see our demonstration and training center. We have a center in a specific area of the reserve between, I think like a lot of you know the reserve, and there are like the two most important sanctuaries where the monarch arrived in Mexico, like it's Sierra Chincua and El Rosario. Our training center is in the middle. It's a strategy, is our key to promote a trust relation with the inhabitants of the reserve, because they come to our center and see more than 40 sustainable techniques. We demonstrate that it's possible to conserve and to restore the ecosystem, and at the same time promote solutions to have a good quality of life. And then you can see a photo of some of the members team of Alternare. How we do it. There you can see in the presentation our model. Our model is integrated by 4 programs and 3 action lines. As I mentioned before, please keep in mind that we promote the development of capacities at individual, group, and community level. So our we say that is the heart of our strategy is training of trainees. We promote that there are local leaders, because people that live in the same context are going to be empathic, no? So we annually we promote solutions, and we promote a grant at individual level. So the local people in the reserve are able to have the opportunity to come to our capacity center and to learn our model, and then replicate it in their communities. So today we have more than 215 local leaders promoting sustainable solution for the conservation and the restoration of the reserve in their communities. There are indigenous communities and ejidos. This is important. Then we have food security and housing improvement. Through this program, please keep in mind that to think about conservation and restoration, first of all, we have to think about the basic needs of the people. This is why we promote different sustainable techniques to be sure that the people have sufficient food, free of agrochemical, and at the same time that they are promoting, I don't know, like the healthy of the soils, for example, or to have sufficient water and clean water for the family and for the production, and at the same time to promote that the people have a good quality of life and satisfy their basic needs of housing through eco techniques and self food security, sorry, for their families. For migratory problems in the region, as many of you I think know, there are the men of the communities go to the cities for opportunities to improve the incomes of their family. So this is why we work with a lot of women. There are like 90% of the people that are involved in this program are women. Also, it's important to say that through working this program, we request to make a group. The group are going to be integrated for 8 women or maybe 12 women. So it is important because we really believe that to promote sustainable development process, the people of the communities have to be organized and have to be involved in participatory process. So this is why we request that to have the workshops to integrate a group, and then an instructor from a local leader from the first program go to the community and develop a diagnostic participatory in order to systematize the vision of the group, how they want to see their family in the future, how they want to see their territory in the future, what are the main problems that they are facing. I don't know, as you can know, one of the main problems that we are facing in the reserve is the climate change impact. So it's really, really important to don't have this lack of information, and the people see in their work plan for the different techniques that they identify that they want to be involved to answer no to the opportunity and how they want to see the reserve in the future, their family in the future, at individual level, how the women want to see her no in the future. So it's a really amazing program. I think like if you have the opportunity to come to Alternare, please keep in touch, and maybe you can know some of these women where we are working. Annually, we work with more than 200 women organizing in different group levels. Then we have to think like in order that okay, we have satisfied our basic needs, now we can think about conservation. No, we are doing conservation at different levels, but now we have to think about everything we can imagine that are needs to conserve the forests, like biodiversity monitor, reforestation, restoration, different governments, strange governments for the community with the local authorities in order to promote that they take or they are able to take activities to solve what they see that the forest needs, no, in order to face, I don't know, plagues, water scarcity, and different activities. I have to mention that they are the owners of the forest. They know a lot about the forest. They know what the forest need. So We only promote different exchange knowledge with the forest techniques in Alternare in order to have a better impact and to be sure that we have the density of the forest that the monarch needs to arrive to Mexico, and also the forest healthy for the environmental services that the people need, no, for their needs. Also, it's important to mention that we work with schools, and only we work with more than 30 schools in different educational levels to promote workshops in environmental workshops, because we don't be able to conserve the things that we don't know that exist. So there are a lot of people in the reserve that don't have the opportunity to go to the sanctuaries or don't know the biodiversity that live in their forest. So we promote different activities with the child, with the professors, with the authorities, in order to know why it's important to conserve it and why it's important to make these common activities to promote the conservation and restoration of the area. And also, it's important to mention that annually we make, of course, reforestations, and we have a survival rate really high. It's like 85% of survival rate. Why we have this percentage? Because all the process are with the community. The childs adopt a tree in tree nurseries through these environmental workshops, and they compromise to take care about the tree. And then with the professors and their families, they take care of the tree, and at the same time we prepare the territory, the land that are going to be reforested in July and September. And then we make all these accompaniment, all these follow up of the activities. So this is an example of why it's too important to promote community process with the owners of the land. Then everyone needs money. So this is why for our circle, a sustainable circle, we promote sustainable productive projects. Actually, we are working in more than 10 sustainable productive projects. We have blackberry production, we have apiculture, we have vegetables free of agrochemical, and different traditional bakery, for example, traditional medicine plants, because it's really important that the people have alternatives to improve the income of their families and at the same time promote sustainable techniques, no, in order that we are in a reserve. Also, to have a better impact, we have three action lines. Our demonstration center that I mentioned before, strategic partnerships, because we are sure that alone it's impossible. There are a lot of things to do. And this is why I am really glad to be here and share with you the information about what are the things that we are doing in the reserve, and innovation. As I mentioned before, in the communities there are a lot of traditional knowledge. So we work daily to promote innovation in order to make a match in this traditional knowledge and also technology to have a better impact. Then I'm going to share with you a little bit of photos about the things that I mentioned before. In the screen, you can see some of the local leaders I mentioned before. Currently, we have the opportunity to form like 21 generations of local leaders. They are people that live their lives for almost a year and then come to the center and learn the different techniques that we are promoting in the reserve. And there in the pictures you can see like people working in tree nurseries, working to avoid plagues in the forest, and in the other the last generation are working in the building of dry latrines, because the scarcity of water in the reserve, there is one of the main problems that we are facing, and also the pollution of water. So the dry latrines help, no, to promote a good quality of water and sufficient water in the communities. Then in this slide, you can see some of the activities that we do in the forest and water conservation. in the top of the slide, you can see a wild cat. It's a small wild cat. This is, we make, as I mentioned before, biodiversity monitor. And this for us, it's like a green flag, no? That the work that we are doing with the communities, it's working because we have this species. Also, we do like the monitor of the forest, the production in tree nurseries. In the top of the in the down of the slide, you can see the quality monitor of the water because information is power. So it's really important that the communities know the quality of the water that they are consuming, and then if they have the information, they can take action. No, and also pues, all the activities involve women, young people, local authorities, and also we work hand in hand with the direction of the Monarch Reserve. Then you can see, as I mentioned, we work in this program, like more than 90% of the people that are involved in this program are women. So as you can see in the pictures, there are a lot of women working for the production for vegetables free of agrochemical with different sustainable techniques. And then you can see that there are a lot of women in the town in the photo up the left. You can see there are a lot of there are the part of the team member operational team of Alternare that work hand in hand with these women in the communities. Also, it's important to mention that they promote local markets. There it's really interesting, and it's really lovely to see these hundreds of women working for the sustainable production, everything free of agrochemical. As you can imagine, they put a lot of effort in this production, and also we make alliances with the municipalities to be able that they have a space to sell their production. So this is a local market where they promote their production. And then you can see some of the sustainable productive projects that we are promoting with these indigenous communities and ejidos. There are apiculture, as I mentioned before, traditional plants that they might like medicinal oils. Also, we promote blackberry production. And as you can see, there are like really lovely people. Then, as I mentioned, you are welcome to our demonstration training and experimenter center. There we have different techniques, more than 40 sustainable techniques, and you can see it there how every technique have an impact for the conservation and the restoration of the reserve. The first photo, it's a garden. It's traditional garden. For the objective of this garden is to promote traditional medicine techniques. As you can imagine, in the communities, maybe the clinic the more near clinic are I don't know like 1 hour or 2 hours for the community. So it's important that they have alternatives, no, to help them in order to arrive to the doctor at these kind of things. Then you can see vegetable production, and down in the photo you can see we in innovation, for example, we are promoting like there is a drone. We use it to monitor the reforestations in the area that I mentioned before, the survival of the reforestation, because it's really important. Okay, we reforestate, but we need to be sure that these trees survive and these trees was preserved as forest. No, the survival we evaluate like every 2 years, and the permanence of the forest we evaluate it like every 10 years. No, and also pues, it's important to say that we have a very good results, but I insist because the process are hand in hand with the community and the owners of the territory. And then you can see in this part of the picture, local people installing monitors cameras for the biodiversity monitor. Why is important to promote this kind of sustainable development models? First of all, because we have to give alternatives, sustainable alternatives of life from the owners of the territories if we want to conserve, no, and restore the area. Then, because we are really sure that it's possible to promote a coexistence between ecosystems and people, we are really sure that the way to do it is to strengthen the local capacities. No, we have to help and to be involved with them in order to promote a common vision for the conservation and restoration of the area. And also, actually, as I mentioned before, one of the main problems are climate change. So we have to work to promote that the people have the capacities to adapt to the climate change, and at the same time to help from the resilience of the ecosystems. There you can see some of the main challenges that we see in this diagnosis that we make with the inhabitants of the reserve. First of all, the lack of opportunities. So we have to promote, no, that the people have these capacities and these alternatives of life. Lack of income, no. So this is why we promote productive projects, sustainable productive projects. Climate change. This is why we work systematizing how the people are seeing that the climate change are impacting in their territories and promote solutions, no, through the different sustainable techniques that we promote. Lack of information, we try to avoid this lack of information, giving academic information and the different initiatives that are promoting for the conservation of the area, trying that these local leaders give them to the communities. Strengthen governments in the communities. This is really important, and actually we are really glad because we have the trust of the people, of the local authorities, of a lot of these indigenous communities, so they trust in Alternare, in our team, and we are helping to promote this tranche of the government in order that they take actions for the conservation and restoration of their territory. Inequality. This is why we work a lot with young people and women. As I mentioned before, information is power. So if the people have information, if the people have abilities and capacities, the owners of the territory are going to listen to them and are going to believe in them, and also they are going to take action, no, for the conservation and restoration of the land. We work for avoid the land use change. We work for the permanence of the forest. And there is really important to mention that in our diagnosis, we find that the people of the reserve, a lot of people are really worried about the density of the forest. So in the diagnosis, we promote, no, in the workshop plans, we promote that the people take decisions in order to conserve the forest, because they are going to need the water for their production, and they need like the healthy soils, no, in order to have a better production, and this kind of decisions that are key. And also one of the main problems, violence and insecurity, how we face it, we have the trust of the community. So the community told us via SMS or WhatsApp or via a call when there are not the conditions in the community in order to receive to Alternare team. But also we have safety protocols, no? So we work, and also it helps that 70% of the people that integrate Alternare team are local people. So I think this is key. In this map, you can see the reserve, and you can see that we have the opportunity to work with more than 20 indigenous communities and ejidos. They are involved in different trainings in different levels, as I mentioned, individual, group, and community level. And this is, we believe that working with them, we are able to conserve, no, with and from the communities. These are some of our results. I'm not going to stop a lot with that because I mentioned before there are the number of hectares reforested, our survival rate. This is the number of the trees produced in community and school nurseries. It's really important to insist in the importance of work with the schools and the local authorities and the parents because in the when we take decisions involving the whole community, this helps us a lot to have better results. Also, we monitor the water quality in different communities and work with the academy in order to have this validated evaluation about the quality of the water. As I mentioned before, we have the trust of the communities for our organization as Alternare that work in field, that work hand in hand with them. This I have to say that is our more important achievement to have the trust of the communities. And also you can see another results now, like the fire management plan in the reserve, comprehensive management plan for the water in the reserve, different payment for environmental services with the communities. And then you can see in the screen uh, what are with our strategy, no, working. Why? What are the things that we are going to do actually in the next years? We are working to involve the general population in protect the monarch migratory phenomenon. We work daily to build human capacities for conservation and restoration of nature. Um, Always in the reserve, or we think that all the humanity are facing like a big problem, a comprehensive problem. So it's important, no, to build these human capacities and this vision from the coexistence of the good quality of life of people, and also the conservation of the restoration of the ecosystems. We really believe that a campesino listen better to another campesino. This is why we think our model have good results. So we promote a lot this kind of building capacities. We also, as a nonprofit organization, for the institutional process of our organization, we are working for the self-sufficiency for Alternare. As I mentioned before, Alternare was founded for 4 people, and now we are 30. No, so we want that Alternare lives and Alternare have the capacity to be replicated, no, and have the capacity to promote solutions because or we have indicators about the economy impact, but the environmental impact and social impact of our model. So we really believe that we have the capacities to do it. And also the transfer leadership. This is why we work because we think that we have to work daily for the permanence of Alternare. In the screen, I'm going to share some, like, we are really glad we have a lot of national and international awards. I'm going to stop only in 4 of them. One of them is it's given to Alternate in 2024 for the United Nations Development Program for the work that we are doing with the women of the reserve, because they are building solutions for the equality of gender equality, sorry, through sustainable practices. In 2018, the United States Organization and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service give us the recognition for conservation champion. And the last year, for our institutional capacity, Razón de Ser, that is one of the most important awards for institutional organization as Alternare, give us this recognition. And also for because we have evaluations, yearly evaluations about the transparency about every donative that we receive. We have the certification about transparency and institutionality. And in the last October, we are really, really glad about this recognition because FAO in Rome give us this recognition for our work for the to promote practices in sustainable forest production and forest protection, and we are the unique Mexican organization in this ranking, and also they only select all around the world 24 initiatives. So for us it's like, okay, it's working, the people are believing that it's possible, no, and we have indicators to demonstrate it. So for us it's really important to have this recognition, but also and most important because the strategy all around the world of FAO is to promote better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life through and working hand in hand with people that live in vulnerability conditions. And our models do it, and our models are promoting results. So this is why we are really, really happy to have these recognitions. In this slide, you can see some of our partners and contributors. There are they believe in our work, and we are really thankful about it. And also some of the networks, because as I mentioned before, one of our strategies is to work through different alliances and networks. So there you can see some of the networks that we promote. Then I'm going to stop. If you have any question, please feel free to tell me. Also, if you scan the QR code, you can see a 2 minutes video in English. I think maybe it's going to be easy. And you can see our channel information, social channels information, a web page, and different contact information. So I'm going to stop there.
Erin, thank you so much. What an amazing organization. We are so grateful for your time in sharing that. And just so everyone knows, that 2-minute video, we will send that out in the email that we'll send out on Friday with any other resources, including the Alternare website and place to donate to the organization as well. So thank you. Thank you so much. We've got a few questions, and please, as a reminder, to put your questions in the Q&A if you have a question that you would like to ask Karen. And so I will start with a few, and yeah, here we go. This is maybe a personal question for you, but could you share your favorite story or part of working with Alternare? What has been your favorite moment or piece of working there?
Ah, that's a lovely question. I don't know, maybe when I have the opportunity to know to the co-founders. I think like if there are more people as the co-founders of Alternare, there are a different world, a different Mexico, but also a different world. I think like their vision, I think like sustainability today, it's like a common word, no? It's like in our language. But imagine 30 years ago. And 30 years ago that arrived two campesinos and two biologists to the reserve and to tell everybody that you have to work with the people. Don't only think in the monarch. The monarch is really important, but the territory have owners, no? So you have to put solutions and to listen to the people, and they do this model, this incredible model, no? And also when you see the training, the capacity training center of Alternare, you see that every tree have a function in the ecosystem. So I think that maybe when I have the opportunity to know them, it's like for my mind, it's like, okay, there is the way. We have to work with the owners of the territory. We have to give alternatives of life, no? Because it's possible. Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work because the sustainable practices that the people, the inhabitants believe in Alternare, they work a lot, but they believe it's possible, and they believe that it's need because they want to I don't know how to transfer this territory to the future generations, no, for their families. So I think that this is my favorite moment when I understand and I have the opportunity to listen from their voices, the co-founders of Alternate Voices, how they live this whole process, and now be part of this. I think this is one of I try to answer the question. It's really difficult. I think it's the first time that someone asked me something like that, but I think this is my favorite moment.
I think that's beautiful. They clearly have you know, a beautiful start and have created this beautiful organization. So to be able to think about that and understand that is wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. I know you've kind of talked about this a little bit, but just to kind of speak a little bit more about it, just so folks in the United States understand, are the forest areas you are monitoring and restoring owned by individuals, businesses, or government? So the reserve and such, like
Okay, can
who
you
owns them?
repeat?
Yep,
Who
who
okay,
owns the land? So
the owners of the land are indigenous communities and ejidos are the owners of the land. So they take decisions about the conservation and the restoration of the area. I'm going to return to this map.
mhm.
So in this map, you can see in this area, like it's the orange area, are the core zone. In the core zone, there is a protected area. Anybody are able to do anything in this forest, and there are some of the principal sanctuaries. No, so to conserve this area, we have to conserve. It's like a cluster that this green area in this green area the people are able to do some activities, no, so this is why it's important to work with them. So the owners are these indigenous communities are traditionally are the lands owners of this territory. So the function or the activity that we do as a non-profit organization and the activity of the government, it's to help them in order to conserve the forest and also that they have opportunity of life, because traditionally the people, before there is a reserve, the people live through the I don't know how to say it in English, the forest model, though. So it's important for them to have solutions and to have these plans that I mentioned in that we work with them in the program of forest and water conservation, that to promote solutions about the things that they are going to do in the buffer zone to conserve the core zone of the monarch, but also that they have water or they have sustainable productive projects, no?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Right. So before the reserve was there, it was just their land. And then that was that you know, name of that place, that protection of that place was brought on to that land.
Yeah,
So helping them to still live their life, to have a, you know, make a living, you know, have their family's space, but then also conserve the forest for the
yeah,
monarch.
yeah, and there it's really, really important. Maybe I can use an example that it's like we put an example that maybe imagine that you have your house, no? But then the government arrived and told you that, Jenna, this is going to be your house, but you are not able to live there because your house is amazing, no? And they put it in the eye of all around the world, no? But stop, this is your house, but you are not able to live there. So you are going to be mad, no? Because, okay, this is my house. What are the alternative? So this is why it's really, really important to work with them because they are the owners of the territory, no? So yeah, it's really complex, but it's really interesting.
It is. And I appreciate that example. I think that really puts it in perspective for people, that yes, we want to protect this space for the monarch, but at the end of the day, it is the people's land, it is their space. And so for your organization to really put the people first is really beautiful. And I really honor that. It's really lovely. Another question, do you work with universities in the
Yeah,
area?
Yeah, we work a lot with the universities principal. With the in Mexico, it's really interesting that there are indigenous universities. In Mexico, we term them intercultural universities. They work a lot for to save the traditional knowledge. Some of the subjects are in indigenous language,
Mhm.
but also the careers or the bachelors that they promote are in sustainable techniques. So there it's really interesting that the inhabitants of the reserve was have the opportunity to be formed in sustainable techniques, agroecology, sustainable forest management, conservation, biology, these kind of subjects. And also we work with the UNAM. No, for us it's like the most important university in Mexico. We have the opportunity to work hand in hand with the academy, with the principal scientists in Mexico that work for the conservation of the reserve, because we are sure that we have to have this base, academy base for our work, our technical knowledge and the traditional knowledge. No, this is why, this is how we work. Yeah.
Yes, that's beautiful. I think that's a really it's something that's happening in the United States too, of that blending of traditional ecological knowledge and scientific knowledge. I think is so important and so honestly so much better for the land. There's so much knowledge in indigenous
Yeah.
cultures that goes unspoken for when you're just looking at science. So that's really amazing. Let's see. There's a question about fire. How is fire used in the reserve area?
Yeah, in the area, we work to make these fire management plans in order to have the abilities and capacities in the communities to face some fire, to avoid the fires. And we work a lot with the academy, no, and the direction of the reserve. So there is important, and also we work in workshops with the inhabitants of the reserve in order that they have the capacities and the abilities. But it is important to mention that to face the fires in the reserve, there are like the authorities in Mexico to do it. No, we only help when we have this kind of problems in the reserve, but the responsibility is from the different entities in government, and we also help that the community that lives there and are like the more approachable to solve some fire or these kind of things, that they have the abilities.
Great, thank you. Is there concern about wildfires with climate change, or is it just management that you're concerned with?
I think that it's both of them, but in the reserve, I don't know. Maybe if I think like in the last year, yeah, there are, one of the main problems are the scarcity of water and the plagues in the reserve. So the trees was stressed and they are vulnerable for fires. This is why it's really important to work to face these plagues for the forest, and to keep the density of of the forest, to have the humidity that need like to avoid the fires. No, I think that there is like the two of them, but as in my experience, I don't know if I think like in the last year, I think it's climate change a lot.
Yeah,
The scarcity of water, it's a big problem. It's a huge problem in the region.
yeah. Thank you. There's a question about the students adopting trees that you were talking about early on. Are they adopting trees like, in a nursery and then they get planted into that sanctuary, or is it after they are planted?
No, it's, I think this is one of the vision of the co-founders that I think like, yeah, that's a good solutions. Yeah, the students and the professors adopt the trees in the tree nurseries. So they have the I don't know, the their main activity is to be sure that the trees grow up the sufficient I don't know how to say it in English. I forget the word. The tall of the tree sufficient for the reforestation that
Mhm.
are going to be to July to September, more or less. No, and then they prepare the territory for where these trees are going to be reforested, no? And then they work to have to do all the activities to be sure that these trees are going to grow up in good conditions. Then in the schools, why it's really interesting for the schools. In the one hand, like this educational process and to be involved in why it's important to have the trees and these kind of things. But also with our donors, we are able to pay like for the trees production in the nurseries, and with the professors we make these plans and they invest the invest the money to improve the conditions of the school. So it's lovely because they have yeah, it's I work for the tree production, I see how the trees are growing, and at the same time I have a blackboard, and at the same time I have like books, or at the same time I have like computers for the kids and these kind of things. And this is why for us it's one of these virtuous process in the communities.
Mhm. Oh, that's beautiful. Love that. Um, do you work with other environmental organizations like the Nature Conservancy for funding, science work, or training?
No, we work. I don't know, in United States, for example, we were like, you are like a good allies, for example. No, we know it, both organization really well. We also work with Monarch Butterfly Fund. We work in Mexico with Mexican Conservation Fund, no, in order to promote different conservation projects in the region. But we but actually or currently with another conservation organizations we don't have projects ongoing. Historically we have the opportunity to do it now, maybe one or two of them, but currently there are not like another projects.
Thank you. Does agriculture threaten the forests?
Okay, how so yeah, I have to return to the map. So yeah, we have to work to promote solutions in order to maintain like the forest density, but at the same times in the area that are open for land use, they promote like I don't know, maybe we have a big problem about yeah, I think like you know it, not like from avocado, for example. But we have to think that I'm going to put it in numbers. When you produce corn in the in the areas that they are able to produce, I don't know, like corn, they receive more or less than 10,000 Mexican pesos. No, if they maintain, if they use this land from the avocado, they receive more than 500, no, 5,000, I don't know, like 500, 500,000. I don't know how to say. Yeah, it's okay. Mexican pesos. There are like more than the double, more than 50 times how they receive about the corn. So this is why we work that with the area, the buffer area where they are able to produce, that they produce it with sustainable techniques. No, here the thing it's not to think only that no, they are yeah, producing. Yeah, because they need to feed to their families. They need to have income for their families. Here the thing is how can we do it in a sustainable way? Because we are in a reserve, no? So and why for them it's important to keep the forest being forest? Yeah, because they need the water that the forest give them for their production. How they want to why for them are going to be interest to avoid the use of agrochemicals, because the water are pollution, no? are going to be with agrochemicals. So this is why they take the decisions. So, okay, we have like healthy problems in our community. Our water don't have the quality for our production or for our self-consume. So this is why it's important to work with them and have in mind that we have to promote alternatives of life. Also, for sure, have in mind that we have to work for maintain the density of the forest to keep the conditions from the monarch butterfly to arrive. No.
Thank you so much for that. Like you said, it's their home, and it's about the balance of
Yeah.
how you use the land, and Alternare is doing just that to bring in those sustainable practices. So thank you. One more kind of land use question, and then we'll finish up with one more, I think. How has illegal logging changed over the years?
I think that we have good news about it, and you can see it about the maps and the official indicators. No, like in the Corson, where I mentioned that the monarch arrived. I think that in this reserve, especially in the Monarch Butterfly Biosphere Reserve, like the trees have name and last name. We have the opportunity in Alternate to be part of this committee that analyze yearly how is the density of the forest in the Corson, and they have these studies with drones that it's really special, no? And there we can transfer or share this information with the communities. So I think that with illegal logging, it's really controlled in the Corson,
Mhm.
and we have to do a lot of work in the buffer zone, no, to maintain more forest in order to have this cluster for the core zone of the reserve, but also to give them different alternatives, no.
Great, thank you. Is the OML fir a protected species in the reserve or outside the reserve?
Yeah, we work a lot with endemic species. So it's really important to continue produce these trees that are the endemic species in the reserve. And there, I think like there are different species of pine and nojamel that are endemic, and we work a lot to produce it and to use it for the reforestations and to continue with the select of the seeds. No, this is really important to select the seeds because the seeds that are endemic have this capacity to be able to be more resistant for the water scarcity and these kind of things. We have different interesting activities about it.
Right. Um, I have two more questions that I really want to ask real quick before we end here. Is it, I know is it possible to expand the buffer zones? Is that something that could happen in the future, like through the government, or is it kind of the size it's going to be?
As I know, for to achieve this, we need like a complex process. But I think that if as you can see in the news in the last year, the monarch moves. So there are lots of monarchs that arrive not to the main sanctuaries, they are arriving to another zones. So we work with the communities in order to have the density of the forest to maintain the monarchs in this core zone. But if the monarch still moves, I think it's going to happen. No, and who take the decision? The government. Maybe if the community were like for the communities, yeah, we have to think that the tourists it's part of the income of the communities, no. So maybe if the community, if the monarch moves, are going to be interest for the community to maintain the forest and maintain the density because they are going to be able to have another income, no. So I think there are going to be a lot of stakeholders involved, that I think it's a complex process, but maybe it's going to happen.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And then lastly, just a real quick question, and maybe this is, a co-founders type of question, but was it difficult to build trust with the communities when Alternare first began their work?
Yeah, as they share with me, and I live that daily with our team in Field. Yeah, the people, a lot of the people that work with Alternare, the operational team, and also the inhabitants of the reserve that work with Alternare, is because is because we believe that it's possible. No, because as I mentioned before, it's a lot of work to do it. No, it's easy to put agrochemical. No, but if you don't think in the long term about the water pollution, about how the agrochemical are going to affect your soil, no, and how the impact are going to have in the forest and in the whole environment, it's easy. So for the people, as the co-founders share with me, it's really difficult because the people was mad. Firstly, because they don't have the opportunity to be part of the decision to make it a reserve. And also, as I mentioned, they are the owners of the land, so they are mad about it. On the second hand, the people in Mexico, we have a big problems about assistance projects. So when you arrive with a strategy where you ask them to work a lot, to put a lot of time, to look at the pot of effort, for them it's easy, like, come and give me money. No, for us, it's like, no, Alternare don't give money. Alternare give knowledge. Alternare was here to promote, to exchange knowledge, because you have a lot to share with me. And maybe I can share something with you. And we have to work for something bigger, no? That is the wellness of you, of your family, of our community, and the environmental services that millions have from this forest, no? And also for the monarch, because you have an amazing phenomenon migratory thing, no? And it's like, okay, so we can start there, no? Thinking about the long-term solution and why it's important for all of us, no? So it's really difficult. It's a lot of effort. Also, the people that you see in the photos that are part of our operational team, I have to say, they are diamonds. They are diamonds in the local reserve. They are inhabitants of the reserve. The people hear them, no, a lot. And I have to mention that, imagine put in an assembly with 80 hundred of people to conserve their forest, and why it's important to do it in a sustainable way, no? So yeah, it's difficult, but I think, as I mentioned, I think that everyone that are part of Alternare, the inhabitants of the reserve that they are also part of Alternare, the operational team, our council, and also the co-founders, is because we believe it's possible, no? If we want to conserve and reserve, we have to do it with the people.
Erin, thank you. Gracias for your knowledge, for your time. That was wonderful. Your organization is phenomenal. I wish you all the best. I hope one day that I can get down there to see this amazing operation, because just very inspirational. So we thank you. Obviously, lots of love here coming in from the participants today. Thank you all so much for your questions. And Alyssa is going to put the feedback form in the chat if you all would be so kind to fill that out for us to continue to improve this webinar series. And we invite you all back for our last webinar of 2025. I can't believe I'm saying that already. Our last one will be on Tuesday, December 16th. This will be climate change effects on the timing of monarch life history events. We'll be joined by Dylan MacArthur Waltz. He is a PhD candidate in the Yang Lab at UC Davis. We will also be introducing our 2026 Monarch Conservation Webinar Series list of speakers. So again, thank you, Karen, so much. You are a wealth of knowledge, and we are so grateful for your time. Everyone have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you.